Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I hope you all had a wonderful lunch. As we're bringing folks in, as they're joining, I'm just going to go over a few just like little intro slides, and I'm sure you've heard them in some of our the other sessions in the morning that you might have joined. If you're having any technical difficulties or connection issues, please go ahead and let our CVent person Bryce know, or of course, here's the link. You can go to the Green Room Tech Support link, right, this one. If you're having any tech issues at all, joining in, or at some point, maybe it kicked out, things happen. You know, we have such a large event today. A lot of people are joining. That means a lot of internet's being used. So it makes sense. So I just want to remind everyone that's joining that all the microphones and videos are off. Oh, it seems like the videos aren't off. So if it's comfortable with the presenters, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, but we do have the microphones off for the session, right? Yeah. Okay. And then we also are going to have a little survey at the end just to kind of get your feedback on what how you felt about the session. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide. So just, you know, a couple disclaimers. We want to make sure it's a safe space for all. The session is offered through the Crisis and Recovery Enhancement Care TA Center, which is funded by the California Department of Healthcare Services, DHCS. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the California Department of Healthcare Services. In the case of any security issues that may occur, the session will immediately end and will not resume, and a separate email will be sent to all participants with further instruction as on the new link. And I got a question already, great. The slides will be available, I believe, after the conference or after the session, unless the presenters are okay with sharing a PDF version to the audience in the chat box. That's totally fine as well. And then you're welcome to use a chat box. Let's go into the next slide. You're welcome to use the chat box for questions that you have for the presenters throughout the presentation today. And then the messages will be seen by the moderators, as the presenters, moderators, and Bryce, who's our CVent person. And we're going to be able to just I'm going to be monitoring the questions, collecting them for the Q&A session at the end. Please use I statements in the chat and avoid making comments that are stigmatizing or otherwise injurious towards others. If you need support at any time for difficult feelings, please exit from the session and go to a Feel It to Heal It room. They have it in the CVent site, website where you can access crisis and warm lines and other supportive resources. And then these are just on the screen. You'll see that there's you can use speaker view to enlarge the screen to see the speaker. If you know other videos are, so for some folks I know may be distracting. Unless you want to see everyone's wonderful faces, that's totally okay as well. And just, you know, be mindful of the community agreements that are listed at the bottom of the screen, and there's some resources as well. Let's go to the next slide. So I would love to, I'm excited to hand over the presentation over to our presenters from Change Matrix. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ragini. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining the presentation today. My name is Dr. Tanisha Freeman Foster, and I am a change specialist with Change Matrix, and I would like to introduce my colleague or have her introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Alice Choi. I am change specialist at Change Matrix also.
Thank you, Alice. Right, so just to jump into our learning objectives. So the purpose of this session today is to increase your understanding of the Bold Conversations learning series, visions and objectives. And so essentially we are going to walk through a session that we facilitated in a few months ago, and we'll be actually moving to facilitate our next cohort of this session in a few months. And so our goal is just to increase awareness and understanding around the Bold Conversations learning series and how it may be of benefit to you or individuals that you work with. And so our second objective is that participants will assess the ways in which bold conversations aligns with their organization's visions for anti-racist behavioral health culture, communities, and service delivery. And our third learning objective is that participants will gain the knowledge necessary to identify potential staff applicants for the Bold Conversations learning series. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, about our upcoming cohorts, and also where you can find the information to apply for that next session. So our community builder, we always like to start off all of our sessions with a community builder. And so in the chat box, please describe anti-racism using one of your 5 senses as a metaphor. And so you can say anti-racism looks like, anti-racism tastes like, anti-racism sounds like, anti-racism smells like, anti-racism feels like. And this can be based on your own perspective or the culture within your organization. What does it look and feel like to be in an organization that is anti-racist and that supports anti-racist principles? And so an example is that anti-racism feels like home, feels like a place where everyone can be themselves without feeling judged. And so we encourage you to be creative and innovative around this. We always get such good feedback and such innovative things that we've never thought of throughout this exercise. And so we'll open up the chat box for that now. Anti-racism feels like family. Thank you so much. Anti-racism smells like fresh star glacier lilies blooming. Wow, thank you for sharing that. Belonging. Feels like unity, feels like peace, can feel uncomfortable and empowering. Awesome. Anti-racism feels like breathing, sounds like acceptance, someone like the stargazer. Anti-racism feels like safety, feels like happiness and fulfillment. Sounds like phones ringing for colleague to colleague check-ins. Very creative. Anti-racism tastes like lavender ice cream on a hot summer day. That's just, I can imagine that in my head. That's very vivid, very great. Thank you all so much for sharing these. Looks like colorful and beautiful. Looks colorful and beautiful. Anti-racism smells like having monthly cultural potlucks at work. Wow. Feels joyous in the warmth of sun. These are so great. Thank you all so much for sharing these. Looks like good comfort food. Smells like fresh air, being able to breathe. And someone says yum. And so this is an example of a community builder. And we also encourage you to use these things in your organizations as well to generate conversations around what the organization's culture should look like and feel like for others. And it takes some of the pressure off of having these uncomfortable conversations, and also a lot of times sets the foundation to be able to have these conversations and allowing people to kind of remove themselves from it and look at it through a shared lens, such as the 5 senses. So anti-racism feels like a brand new fresh start. Tastes like water so calm and place, it's natural. Wow. Feels like people seeing me and accepting me as I am. Sounds like the distinctive cry of a newborn child. Sounds like speaking out even when uncomfortable. Great. Thank you all so much for sharing that. So moving on to our next slide. So what's the big deal about bold conversations? And we have this beautiful mosaic picture in this in the middle of this slide. And what that represents for us is that people are able to just be themselves. They're able to be their authentic selves. And so you see a variety of colors that we're able to come in with different thoughts and different ideas and still able to have conversations in a respectful way and accept that we may walk away not agreeing with something that someone said, but we can still walk away with our dignity and pride intact and still go back to working together and still love each other despite having different opinions and different experiences. And so this is what this mosaic represents, that we can come in as ourselves and be authentic and leave as that too. It's not one color where we all have to come in and we all have to assimilate to the same way of thinking or being or doing, but that we can come with this shared goal of having the best outcomes for our clients or having the best culture within our organization where people feel safe and free and still hold true to those things that are valuable to us and those things that make us who we are. And so it's the courage to have meaningful conversation that leads to progress, and also a place where individuals are encouraged to express their views openly and truthfully rather than defensively or with the purpose of laying blame. So getting to the roots, the why, and this is something that we talk about in our Bold Conversation series, is we go back to the why. Where did it come from? And a lot of times we find that it comes from childhood, the things that we learned about people who were different from us, or the groups that we may be associated with as adults, different associations or different groups in our community where there may be homogenous participation and there may not be a lot of opportunities to learn about people who are different from us in race and ethnicity or values or beliefs or religion or other experiences. And it could also come from television and social media, where a lot of times cultural conditioning takes place, where we see certain people, it's shown in certain light. Certain people are shown in a positive light, certain people are shown in a negative light, certain behaviors are deemed acceptable, certain ones are deemed unacceptable. And so we learn those things even subconsciously when we think we're not. They help and impact how we treat others and what we think about others. And so one of the things that we encourage in Bold Conversations is getting to the roots, the why. Where does this information come from? And in what ways does this emotion serve me? And am I ready to change it? And we dig beneath the surface. We look at privilege. We look at cultural conditioning. We look at prejudice, ignorance, affirmation. Where do we receive support in these areas, whether our beliefs are negative or positive? Where are those places that we receive benefits and rewards from? Also familial reinforcements, oppression, maintaining the status quo, because there are benefits for some and consequences for others. Overgeneralization, so something may have happened in the past and we've taken that particular experience with that particular individual and generalized it across similar experiences with people who may look like that individual. Also, it's used to maintain power. Also, fear. Sometimes we act out of fear of the unknown, because something or someone is different from us, and so we automatically assume the negative. And we also talk about racism and white supremacy. And so again, the goal of Bold Conversations is to have authentic and real conversations. One of our other goals for this session is that we don't assume that people come in knowing everything. We understand that people have different things that they're doing in life, and we're all on a different path in regards to our learning. So some may just be starting out and some may be have been on this path for several years, but either way, we all have things to learn and we all have ways that we can improve. And that is the purpose of Bold Conversations. When all of that experience and all of that self-work and self-reflection comes together, we have really amazing conversations and we all grow no matter where we are on that journey. So a little more about Bold Conversations and Implicit Bias. It is a 6-part learning series, and it's cohort based. And so individuals start together and they end together. And so that helps us to really build some level of trust and team within those groups, so that people feel comfortable having those conversations and also uncomfortable having certain conversations, but in a place where they know that they will not be judged. So this is an overview of our process from the last cohort. So there were a total number of applicants were 53. So we opened up the process, 53 actually, there were total number of 53 slots were the total number of slots we had available. And the total number of people who applied were 138. And we ended up with 48 participants. And that number is different from the number of slots because people accepted. But since there were a lot of things going on within the organizations during COVID, some people were unable to participate. They had other duties at home or other duties at work that they were not able to commit to it over the long term. And so they withdrew. Also, during our process, we ensured that we had individuals with diverse backgrounds, that they were individuals from providers or individuals who worked in schools, individuals who identified as peer support staff, who were working in behavioral health. And so this helped to ensure that we had richness within the conversations and within the discussions. We also went through to make sure that we had racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, and also diverse educational backgrounds, that we had individuals who had a high school diploma, a degree, bachelor's, master, doctorate, and so forth. And that, again, intentionally making sure that the participation was diverse so that the conversation could be diverse and rich as well. So the culture of the group was that, again, it was cohort-based learning. So individuals started together and they ended together. There was a fostering of authenticity and uncomfortableness, and we actually welcomed and encouraged that. One of the premises of Bold Conversations is that we grow through that uncomfortableness, that if everything is comfortable and familiar to us, then we continue doing the things that we've always done and getting the results that we always have gotten. And so our goal is to change the paradigm and to really stretch people and challenge them in these uncomfortable spaces. And what we've seen is a lot of growth and development and skill sharpening and confidence around being the best versions of ourselves, and also finding those areas where we are doing really well, and also the areas where we need to enhance and sharpen. And so that's critical for this peer learning community. We had small group skill applications. So another element is that within that group, there were smaller groups, and there were opportunities within every session where groups were broken up into smaller groups, and those smaller groups remained the same throughout the session. And that's where practice took place. And we understood that the more people practice, the better they get at being more confident and having those conversations, and also asking questions that may seem vulnerable that they would not necessarily want to ask around people that they work with every day. Self-reflection and application, and also pre and post assignments were given to participants, and we tried to make sure that the assignment required people to dig deep, but it was not time consuming, because we understand that people have lives outside of this particular session and outside of the work that they're doing. So this is an overview of our session. So session one, we started out with meaningful communication. What does meaningful communication look like? What are some principles of meaningful communication? Then we moved into effective facilitation and the skills and the tools and the principles of effective facilitation. And then we talked about conflict engagement in a way that was healthy, because a lot of times we talk about conflict management or we talk about conflict avoidance. But in Bold Conversations, we talk about engaging in conflict and how conflict can help us to grow. And although it's uncomfortable, we learn from it if we enter it and have expectations that it will be uncomfortable and that we can learn from it at the same time. Then we talked about engaging in bold conversations around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we moved to holding space for bold conversations around equity and inclusion. So we talked about essentially how people show up in the conversations, and then provided the skills on how they could lead and facilitate the conversations. And then we put it all together. How do we engage and how do we facilitate, and what is the plan as individuals move forward within their own organizations? Some of our session themes were learning about differences as a childhood experience, differentiating implicit biases, explicit biases, and racism. Also the dangers of microaggressions, and we provided models for self-reflection and also models for advocacy. We discussed active listening and effective communication and what that felt and looked like and the principles associated with those. Also facilitating bold conversations with others, how to stay in those conversations and how to look at it from a lens of learning and growing versus being fearful and avoidant of those conversations. And then we had practice, and then we practiced some more and we practiced again. And a lot of this practice took place again within those small group sessions. And those small group sessions were during our primary session. So again, we tried to remain cognizant and mindful of people's time and outside of the session and knowing that they had work as well to try to balance. And so the last thing that we added was developing a plan of action. And so now that you have all of this knowledge and these skills, what are you going to do with it? And we walked the participants through creating an action plan for themselves and for their organization, and also the steps and the processes that they were going to use in order to get there. And we had support sessions where we offered opportunities similar to office hours for people to come in and share what they were working on and share the challenges and also the successes and brainstorm other options for it. Next, we're going to move into the participant feedback, and I will turn it over to my team member, Alice, to discuss this.
Thank you so much, Tanisha. So we'll be sharing the participant feedback that we got from our recent session that we held. Next slide, please. So among those who completed the follow-up survey, we got some really positive feedback. 100% of the people who completed the survey, they were satisfied with the overall quality of the training. 100% of them said they'll use the information they gained from the sessions to change their current practices. And then 100% of them would recommend the training to a colleague. Next slide, please. So some of the feedback we also got was we want to know what was most useful for them for their work when they did the trainings. So some of them we shared models. So the models to use for self-reflection. They enjoyed the specific steps with scaffold learning. They loved recognizing the effects of DEI on approach with clients, the obtaining frameworks for having difficult conversations, and they loved the practice and interaction with colleagues. Next slide, please. Some of the things that they felt were most useful within the 6 sessions that they learned were the practice models. The idea of don't expect to feel comfortable or overcome to a result outcome. So the idea of, you come in not comfortable, and that's what we want. So they actually felt people really liked that idea, and it was actually very useful for them when they brought it back to their workplace. Strategies to conduct bold conversations, and then self-reflecting on own biases and helping others to do the same. And of course, our last one was so much, it was hard to articulate. So within 6 sessions, you're going to get a lot of information. It's just a lot to articulate, but it's really useful. But that's why we're here, and then we will help you through it and guide you through these 6 sessions. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's hard to articulate, but in the end, we'll kind of work through it together as a group. So in July or August, in late summer, the application will be announced, and you can see that through the Mental Health Technology Transfer Center Network. And then once we have that in September of this year, we're going to start the next cohort for the Bold Conversation Learning Series. Would you like to add anything else, Tanisha?
No, I think that's it. We will, the application notice announcement will go out, and then there will be a closing date, and then we will notify the individuals in August, and the cohort session will start in September. So there will be some notice in between where individuals will be noticed that they were accepted into the cohort, and they'll have some time to plan their schedule around those 6 sessions. So this is our contact information, and we're going to open it up for questions and additional discussion.
Thank you so much for your presentation. There's a question in the chat. This is, are we able to get a link to have the slides for education in our workplace?
a link to this slide deck?
Mm, not entirely sure. I think Becky, do you want the slides to this specific session or some of the cohorts? Oh, she said she was able to get your email, so it's okay. So
Okay.
and another question that I'm seeing is that another individual who lives in Kentucky, if they could apply for the next cohort.
So what we are doing is we open it up, and then we are giving preference to the individuals who live in the Pacific Southwest territory. So I would still encourage you to apply. What we've done in the past also is we looked at the applicants from various areas. And so we can contact our partners in other regions and say, hey, this is something that is really desired by individuals who live in your area, and look at ways of partnering with individuals from other areas to try to make it available to other individuals as well.
And a quick question, would it be okay to stop the recording now, or would you like to include the Q&A in your recording?
We can stop the recording now, that's fine.
Bryce, go ahead and stop the recording now. Thank you.